Okay, so let's just take a quick look around and see who's here. I see a lot of regulars. Hi, regulars. Um, Lots of waves. Hi, guys. And then I don't see too many people that I don't know. I think everyone here I'm familiar with. At least I've seen your names on the screen during our Sunday night meetups, so that's great. Okay, so I don't really have to introduce myself, I don't think, but for anyone who is unsure, my name is Salima. I am a mindfulness teacher with the Mindfulness Society, and I'm also a Reiki practitioner and a Reiki teacher. And some of you, many of you, I can say, have studied Reiki with me or have studied Reiki with my teacher and are part of our Reiki community, our Reiki family. So for those of you who have studied with me, a special thank you for joining tonight. I also wanted to clarify something, and that is that tonight's talk isn't just going to be for people who practice healing or who practice Reiki. It's for everyone. Everyone can benefit from tonight's talk, even if you've just experienced a healing or experienced some form of, whether it's Reiki or some form of healing. So this talk can benefit you even if you're not a practitioner of Reiki or some kind of a healing agent in this world. Just a quick show of hands, how many of you have experienced some form of energy healing before in the past? Okay, so pretty much everyone on camera. And then if you're not on camera, you can put up your virtual hand or give a thumbs up or whatever floats your boat. So, all right, great. We've got a couple of virtual hands there. So it looks like and we've got a sparkly thumbs up. Excellent. Okay, I didn't even know that was possible. So what I'm going to talk about today isn't going to be necessarily groundbreaking, earth-shattering news to anyone. But I think it will clarify a few things and especially help those of us who are either experiencing difficulty in our mindfulness practice and have access to healing, or who are healers ourselves and want to understand how the practices work together. That will all become a little bit clearer from what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so quick check-in. How many of us right now feel calm, happy, and alert? Quick show of hands. Okay, so we have a few people, calm, happy, and alert. How many can't say with any certainty that there's calm, happy, and alert happening? Don't be shy. Okay, great. Almost equal, maybe even more. I've got a bunch of virtual thumbs ups coming up. Okay, so bravo, first of all. Honesty is required in mindfulness practice, being honest with yourself, not necessarily honest with other people or, your teacher or whatever. In any given moment, you need to be honest with yourself and know how you're feeling, know what's going on internally in your body and mind. And so if you were able to know right now if you were feeling calm, happy, and alert, or whether you were able to notice that you were feeling not those three things, then that's great. Okay, so there's no judgment and there's no need to fix what's there. I wanted to share a little bit about how I came on this path of mindfulness, and I didn't start with mindfulness first. And so for some of you, you might share this same sort of path. I reconnected with a meditation practice. I used to meditate when I was young, like very young, because my family were spiritual people and they used to go and practice, and they were ministers, and they used to haul us kids off with them, and we would go and during the meditation hour, which was 4 to 5 a.m., we'd be sleeping on the carpet in the meditation hall, as kids, me and my younger sister, and our parents were doing their thing, officiating and doing their practice. And I remember my dad said to me when I was a kid, he said, "If you pray and meditate, you'll get anything that you want." And that was very attractive. That was a very attractive premise to live by. And so I tried really hard. I meditated, and I prayed, and I meditated. And I did. I got what I wanted. I prayed for a Barbie doll. And the way that I thought that I would get the Barbie doll was the Barbie doll would come in a soap bubble from the heavens and land in my lap. And it's not exactly how the Barbie doll showed up. She showed up in a plastic box, like a paper and plastic box, how they usually show up. And what was interesting was I was thrilled. I was really thrilled when I got the Barbie doll. But what I noticed was very shortly after I got the Barbie doll, I wanted another Barbie doll. And I didn't get the other Barbie doll right away. I don't even know if I got a second Barbie doll, but I do remember the other thing that happened, which was that the excitement over the Barbie doll really, like, it declined pretty rapidly. Like, I lost interest in the Barbie doll pretty rapidly. And so this kind of thing was kind of the precedent for how life appeared to me as I started to grow a little older into my teenage years and into my 20s. And subsequently, I lost touch with my meditation practice. Certainly lost touch with like religion and lost touch with, and if there was like, if I showed up, in a religious context or, if I showed up, it was usually with my family just to make them happy. And there were a series of events that kind of made me lose faith in humanity and lose faith in a lot of things. And so my life it became kind of chaotic. I remember being very anxious growing up into my 20s, early 30s, and not really practicing anything, just, not even thinking about the big questions like what happens when you die and, that kind of stuff. Just, we're here now, let's just do what we're doing right now and enjoy that. And when I reconnected with Jess, my teacher Jess, who many of you whom you're familiar with, he actually was a friend of mine in university. Not a super close friend, but close enough. And I had reconnected with him after graduation. He had spent a long time in Thailand. And I thought he was nuts for like leaving his cushy job and giving up his sports car and, the monk who sold his Ferrari, like that basically was like Jess, right? Like got rid of all of his, important worldly possessions and then moved to Thailand. And I knew that he was hanging out with the monks and I knew he was doing healing work. And I also knew that he was incredibly smart and was studying actuarial science in school with me. I was studying something else, but we were in the same school, same university. And when I reconnected with him, we had, I think I've told this story many times, but we had a conversation that led me to believe that he had some really important powers. And I started practicing Reiki after having a few sessions with him. I thought Reiki was garbage. I thought it was just fluffy, nothingness. And, I asked him a bunch of pointed questions and he answered them beautifully. And after a few sessions with him, my mind was blown. And I asked him to be my teacher. And he said, sure, get 3 people together and I'll teach you a course in the spring when I come back to Toronto and visit my mom. I said, okay. And I got, myself together, I, got a couple of people and we took the Reiki course, Reiki level 1, just the beginner course, 2 days, very, very foundational, fundamental, not anything taxing at all, just super, super interesting and super fun. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought, okay, this is cool. Like, I learned how to do this. I can practice on myself when I want to. And then it sort of hit me. In the days and weeks after I took that course, I would wake up in the morning. I kid you not, my hands, I'd be lying on my back and my hands felt like they were buzzing, like they were, like as if they were plugged into the wall and they were like vibrating like this. And I realized that it was the Reiki energy. And I thought, oh no, I'm wasting it. And so I would immediately, put my hands on myself and give myself a Reiki treatment. And so that became my practice every day. So every morning when I woke up, I would spend an hour or close to an hour and give myself a Reiki treatment. And that was really my introduction, my reintroduction or my reconnection back to spirituality. Certainly my reconnection with meditation and then following that mindfulness. And so for me, I've found that doing healing work and experiencing healing has opened the doorway and led to an easier entrance into mindfulness and meditation practices. They sort of jump-started it. They sort of gave me a bit of I want to say like a head start or like a fast track. And some of you may have the same kind of experience where you started off with healing work, maybe learning Reiki, maybe another kind of healing or energy healing, and you found that meditation feels a little bit easier, and you found that mindfulness became a very natural progression out of that. And if so, then that's great. And some of you might have started from the mindfulness perspective and started with meditation, and then found that healing was necessary in certain moments where you felt like you got stuck or when you felt like you needed certain kinds of help. Okay, so these two practices really do support each other in various ways, and I'm going to talk about that today with everyone. So I want to be clear about, I mentioned a moment ago that mindfulness and meditation, I didn't say they're the same thing. They are separate and different things. Whereas meditation is used mostly to bring a mind that is scattered, a little bit more alert or focused, a mind that is busy to be a little bit more calm, and a mind that is unhappy to feel happier. Mindfulness is something much more powerful and important, and the purpose of mindfulness is to eradicate suffering from our hearts and minds. And the way to do that is to have the ability to observe this body and mind of ours in a manner that is stable and neutral, and to be able to see the body and mind as they are so that we can understand the truth of them. Okay. And so you can see that the two practices are, the names of the practices are used kind of interchangeably, but they're pretty distinct practices. And in fact, meditation can be a very good support for mindfulness as well. And so this is where we look at, when we look at practicing mindfulness, we see that sometimes mindfulness practice doesn't seem so easy. Has anyone here had trouble practicing mindfulness, has difficulty at any point in time? Anyone who's practiced mindfulness is going to put their hand up. Okay, so yeah, pretty much everybody who's here is going to put your hand up. And even if if you thought it was meditation, you probably also have difficulty with meditation. If you know that it's not meditation and you're observing the body and mind, you also have difficulty sometimes being able to see the body and mind with a stability and a neutrality that's required. And so why is this? Like when let's take a moment just now, and when we think about observing our own body in our everyday, so let's say we wake up in the morning, or we get out of the car after work, or we get off of the subway after work, or we sit down at our desk, or we're getting ready for bed. And these are moments where we might notice our body. How does it generally feel in this body? Pleasant, unpleasant? What's it feel like? Are we neutral? Are we neutral? And Asher's like, kind of. Are we neutral and stable when we're observing the body? Or do we tend to kind of dislike what we're noticing and feel kind of worn down, or like we want to go in there and fix something, or I got to go see the dentist, or my eyes aren't working as good as they should, or oh my God, there's a gray hair. Okay, generally not neutral. Okay, generally not stable. Okay, so we're generally wanting to go in and fix, or try and do something to make ourselves feel a little bit better. When we observe our mind in daily life, okay, we don't often observe our mind. If we're not mindfulness practitioners, we're generally not observing our mind, but we may every once in a while get this sense or feeling of like, okay, how do I feel? What's the feeling in here? And often when we take a moment to pause and think, and I think we're all adults here, I'm going to take a flip through just to see if I see any children, but I don't think there are. I don't see any kids. So with kids, it's a little bit different, but with us adults, if we're taking a moment to kind of gauge how our mind feels or how our heart feels, what's it generally like? Is it generally feeling light, buoyant, alert, happy? Susanna's like, no, absolutely not. Okay, how many of you agree with Susanna? Not like that generally. Okay, great. So we can see here that when we're observing this body and mind, often we're not going to be able to observe this body and mind in a way that we're able to be neutral. Okay, usually there's something that we want to fix, or we're disliking it, and we get absorbed, or we get caught into whatever that is, okay? And our modern world supports that. You know, our modern world wants us to be angry and demand justice, and it wants us to be outraged, and it wants, just think of the television shows that you're served up, okay? Are any of them happy-go-lucky with no problems? And no, there's every kind of, 7 deadly sins that you can think of. They're just throwing those at you left, right, and center, right? To try and get a rise out of us. And so for this reason, it becomes much more difficult when we go and do our formal mindfulness practice, or we're practicing mindfulness in daily life. When we don't have a stable formal practice, it becomes difficult. Okay, it becomes much more difficult. So a lot of us might feel that we have either, when we sit down to practice, we'll have, because of these things, we'll have a busy mind. Our mind doesn't feel like it's able to kind of be present or aware with any great ability. We might find that there's some resistance to practice. I've heard this in many mindfulness classes. We don't like the practice, or even when there's 1 minute left in our practice, we notice the joy that starts to come up because, yay, we're going to be finished in a minute, almost done. Thank goodness that's over. I can check that off today and go and do whatever else I want to do. So there's some resistance. There's sometimes disliking the practice. Certainly when people start walking practice, there's a lot of disliking at the beginning. Or if you're doing a lot of body stuff, often if you're I do these hand movements sometimes, right? Opening and closing the hand. If I'm not walking. And if I was just doing this without thinking about it, I wouldn't really pay much attention. But then when my attention goes to it, I notice I hate it. The hand is tired. How can the hand be tired? I was doing this all day, but when I'm sitting and practicing, all of a sudden I'm hating it because the hand's oh, so tired opening and closing. It just feels like such a chore, right? And so there might be, we don't even realize it, but there might be some resistance to the practice under the surface. We might feel emotionally exhausted or overwhelmed. We might have a lot of mental load going on in the background, a lot of things to take care of. We might also sometimes in our practice feel very sleepy. So this has happened to every practitioner as well. Sometimes you sit down to do your formal practice, and what happens? You start nodding off, right? And I see a lot of guilty smiles on the screen because you know what that's like. You've experienced that before. So what can healing work do to help with some of these things? Okay. And I'm going to be talking from the Reiki perspective because that's the healing modality that I've been trained in primarily, and the one that I use with clients and teach to students all the time. So this goes for many energetic practices, but I'm going to talk about it mainly from the Reiki perspective for now. I'm going to give you the definition, or my working definition of Reiki. So my working definition is Reiki is a spiritual or energetic healing practice that naturally and easily elicits healing and well-being in both the practitioner and the receiver. I'm going to say that one more time. Reiki is a spiritual or energetic practice that naturally and easily elicits healing and well-being in both the practitioner and the receiver. And that last part might surprise you a little bit. For those of you who are practitioners, you probably aren't surprised because you might have experienced this before, where you go to give someone Reiki and you might feel a little bit out of sorts, or not completely okay yourself, and by the time you're finished giving that person a Reiki treatment, you also notice that you feel a little bit better, a little bit more in balance. Anyone experienced that before who's practiced healing? Okay, so I see a few hands up. Great. So this is a side effect, a happy side effect of being in that nice Reiki light or that energy. Okay. Reiki can provide healing for physical issues. It can provide healing for mental, emotional issues. It can provide healing for spiritual issues. And when we have some of these issues at times, what happens is that it's very hard to allow ourselves to be able to be stable in our practice. And so that these things can actually prevent self-awareness, the self-awareness that's required for the practice. And I've often found that when I'm giving people Reiki, I would say maybe 30% of the time, at least towards the end, maybe sometimes at the beginning, I might even be guiding them towards being able to come into a frame of mind where they're able to see themselves from a more neutral context. And so I even feel like I would say probably about 25% of the time, I am actually teaching mindfulness while I'm giving Reiki to people. And it's because I've come to realize that the healing itself, I might just see that person one time and they might get the benefit of that healing once. But if I can give them something that they can take forward with them as a practice, even as a very entry level type of mindfulness practice, being able to see themselves more independently of their thoughts about themselves or their feelings towards themselves, being able to introduce a bit of that neutrality, then I find that they're able to become more self-aware in their daily life. And then they're able to catch themselves when they start spiraling, or when they find they're fearful of falling into a depression or something like that. They can also become much more self-aware when a physical pain starts to strike, and they can notice that their disliking of the physical pain is actually contributing to their unhappiness. That takes a little bit more concentration, but I have had some success with clients and students as well, with letting them be a little bit more aware of their physical pain in a very different way. So having a different relationship essentially with their pain, even if it's a physical pain. So one of the beautiful things about with Reiki practice or with healing, many forms of healing, is that often people come into it because they have experienced the healing themselves, and they've seen or they've gone through a transformation themselves, or they've suffered tremendously and they've found that the healing has assisted them in some way. And with Reiki in particular, one of the very first things that you learn, and before you actually put your hands on anybody else, you actually learn how to give yourself a full Reiki healing. And that's actually the first bit of homework that you're given on the first day, right? So I send students home the first night and tell them, give yourself a 1 hour Reiki treatment. And they're like, really? I can do that now? And I'm like, yeah, you can do that now. Okay, after the first day. And they come back the second day, and some of them are a little bit stunned that they were able to start feeling the energy. They sometimes say that they slept better. They notice that they feel a little bit fresher. They don't feel as tired as they thought they might feel. They have a little bit more energy, a little bit more alertness. They generally feel a sense of, hard to measure, but a sense of well-being. And so this really helps a person be able to bring the focus from usually being out there in the world, trying to fix the problems and the people, usually it's people, the problems that come up in our lives. I want to change that person. If I change that person, then my life's going to be so much better. Or, if I just adjust this one thing, then my life's going to be better. It shifts the focus from out there to back here. And when people are able to kind of bring their awareness back and be able to be a little bit more attentive to themselves, they often will find that neutrality can start to be a little bit more close to them. They can get to that neutrality a little bit more easily. So paying attention to oneself, which is basically what's required for mindfulness practice. Okay. The second thing that I find healing can help with is being able to concentrate. And this isn't the kind of concentration that you think about. It's not like what I call video game concentration. So when you think of someone who's playing a video game, they're all in, they have blinders on, they can't see what's going on in the room. They don't know that their hand is hurting because they've been moving it the same way over and over all day. They have no idea if they've eaten or not eaten. They're just completely absorbed and, inside the video game. That's not the kind of concentration that I'm talking about, but it's a concentration that allows us to be with something a little bit more attentively because we have an interest, because it's interesting to us, because it feels good, it brings us a little bit of joy or happiness or even just a little bit of peace. And so I found when I learned Reiki level 1, what was one of the reasons why I was giving myself Reiki in the mornings? It was because well, first of all, I wasn't really a morning person, so I didn't like waking up. I'd go out partying late at night. Let's just be honest. I was out partying till 2 a.m. and then I'd have to be at work at 9 a.m. Right? So that was kind of hard to do. So I found that if I woke up an hour earlier, instead of hitting like the snooze button, I would just start giving myself a Reiki treatment. And by the time that hour or close to an hour was done, I'd sort of leap out of my bed feeling calm, happy, and alert. Okay, all of the things that are required for for a better mindfulness practice. So this concentration can be very easily aided by, with Reiki, what is very much a very passive practice. It's simply, putting your hands on yourself and moving them when you feel the energy slow down or shift. Okay, so super, super simple and easy. So the third thing that I find healing helps with, and this is something that I think most of us can kind of relate to, and that is when we're not in balance. When we're not in balance with ourselves, we're not in harmony with ourselves or the world, and when we're feeling anxious or out of sorts. Now, everyone, I don't even have to ask for hands because everyone knows what that feels like. We've all had those experiences before. Someone said something to us that was mean, or, we forgot something that we were supposed to do, or, maybe we got upset at someone and we're feeling guilty. We're not able to kind of feel okay within ourselves. All of that sits in our consciousness and can prevent us from feeling at ease and feeling comfortable during our mindfulness practice. So when we're practicing Reiki or other other healing modalities that are energetic in nature, we might find that even just with a very short practice, we might even just put our hands right at our heart center, like right at our upper chest, and we might start almost immediately feeling a sense of well-being come over us. So let's do that now. Let's just take a moment, and feel free to take one hand and put it at your upper chest, one hand over the belly or the upper abdomen. And let's just take a moment to take a deep breath. You can lengthen your spine if you want. And as you exhale, just feeling that support of your hands, feeling how your body is sitting. You might notice the belly, the rib cage, the upper chest expand with each in-breath. You might feel that relaxation with each out-breath. And you probably don't feel perfect. You probably don't feel completely at ease. You probably don't feel completely free from worries or, concerns in your life. Just see if you can bring your awareness just to your hands and that connection. And just being here for yourself. Just observing the breath for maybe a few more seconds. And just feeling this person who's sitting here and breathing. Okay, and you can let go of your hands. Okay, and just feel free to open your eyes if your eyes were closed just now. Okay, come back to our little session here. And just take a moment to notice. Earlier I asked, are you feeling calm, happy, and alert? Just notice if you're feeling any differently now than you did earlier when we did our check-in at the beginning. There might be some shifts. Again, you might not feel completely perfect, okay? And that's not what we're aiming for. But you might notice that whatever was there before is not there now, or whatever is there now might not have been there before. Okay, so that brings us to understanding the impermanence of all things, which is one of the things that we're supposed to be able to see with correct mindfulness practice, seeing the truth of impermanence and how every experience that we have, no matter if it's pleasant or unpleasant, arises and falls. And so in a Reiki session, often people will come out of it, especially their very first one where they don't know what to expect or how it's going to go, and they tend to kind of look like they're a little bit dizzy, and they're like, I don't know what I feel, like something happened but I can't describe it, and they're a little bit just kind of out of what they're normally into, right? They're not in their crunching, problem solving mind. They're just, oh, I feel kind of neutral and empty or light, or, don't know what you just took away from me, but thank you for taking whatever that was away. And so there's this feeling of allowing that release and letting go of what was holding on to us, what's been there, what we're carrying all day long. Okay. I remember, and so feeling that sense of balance is important for mindfulness practice. I remember my teacher Jess telling me a long time ago when I first started teaching mindfulness courses, way back. I think this was like 2012, 2013. And I had some really interesting clients. And Jess said to me, you should name your course Mindfulness for Sane People. And because I had a lot of people who had a lot of very serious issues and difficulties. And in some cases, they might have needed other kinds of healing, other forms of healing. And they weren't getting that healing. They were just taking the mindfulness course. And so it was very clear to me from a long time ago that your mind needs to be of a certain quality to be able to begin the practice. If your mind doesn't have that quality of being able to be aware, you can't really have a successful practice. It's not going to be simple or easy for you. Along with, I was talking about physical ailments and emotional ailments and things like that. Another thing that healing does, and specifically with Reiki, I can't say all forms of healing will do this, but it helps to release spiritual contamination and issues. And I've been on how many trips to Thailand now, and there's always like someone who has like some kind of spiritual issue, something attached to them, something that goes wrong. In one case, that was me. Okay. And Jen's laughing because she's like, I want to help you. So if we have, let's say we have some sort of a spiritual contaminant, some entity in our aura, or, we woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or, there's some negative energy attached to us in some way, it's going to be very hard for us to be able to be level-headed and to be able to practice with any great efficacy. So with healing, this is something that I can't say can be done in a doctor's office. It can't be done with a pill. It can't be done with laser surgery or non-invasive surgery or whatever the latest thing is. No amount of drinking water and going out in the sunlight is going to take away something like that. And so healing can be exceptionally powerful, especially with this one last area when we look at physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, with the spiritual stuff, to be able to help clear our energetic field from outside contaminants and things that are actually actively, in some cases, actively trying to harm us or cause us some kind of discomfort or unease. Okay, so some of us have experienced that. Some of us have facilitated that for other people. And, it's not something that you can come across every day, but it's available. And it is something that is warranting of discussing and sharing. So when we look at mindfulness practice, one of the things that we are endeavoring to do with our practice, and I touched on the impermanence piece, but we're endeavoring to be able to see with such clarity that we start to notice the three characteristics of all experiences, of all phenomena. And those three characteristics are impermanence that we talked about earlier, non-self, and suffering. And while Reiki or healing practices aren't going to get us all the way there, I have noticed that they allow us to be able to kind of step into that ability to observe a lot more clearly. For example, when I'm giving Reiki to someone, or when I'm experiencing a Reiki treatment myself, it's much easier to notice the non-self in that. So when I'm giving someone Reiki, for example, and I'm giving them a message, or I'm facilitating something, I might be waving my hands, or, I might be pulling something energetically, yanking something out of their stomach, or, their hip, or something like that. It's not me who has decided that that's what's required. I'm just loose enough that I'm feeling that that's what's needed. that I'm able to kind of get out of my like, okay, I have to sit like this, I have to make this expression on my face, I have to talk in this way. It gets me out of my everyday way of being. And through the healing practice, what's actually able to happen is I'm able to be loose enough to be like, okay, I got to make a sound now, or I'm gonna blow something away in this direction, or I have to pull this out. And when I'm able to do that, what I'm noticing is that half the time, by this point in my career, I guess you could say, I don't even realize when I start doing it that I'm doing it. Like, there's a certain amount of understanding that I'm doing it, but a lot of the time, even when I'm making sound, let's say making sound and healing, there are times where I'm making sound and I don't even notice until like a second into it that there's sound coming out of my mouth. And there's very much this understanding that the healing is happening, it's happening through me, but it's not happening by me. And in a way, I get to get out of my own way. And I'm not thinking of myself as the healer. I'm not controlling. I'm not doing it. It's not happening because I've decided that I want to do something. It's happening because I'm being guided by a higher force or a higher power to do whatever is required for the healing of that person. And so there's very much this ability to kind of step out of the self and the me and the I and the my and all the focus, being on sort of having this ego. And so this can be really helpful for a lot of us. If you're receiving healing, you might also be able to kind of observe yourself a little bit less, less intensely in a much more neutral kind of way, right? So observe the body. I often will be guiding people. Observe the body breathing. Observe the hands, how they're resting. Observe the feet. Not look at your feet, not look at your hands, not look at your breath. It's the feet, the hands, the breath. And so this helps to take somebody outside of what they thought was their fault or was under their control or was their responsibility or whatever it might be. It takes the self out of it a lot of the time. And this can be very helpful for that one aspect, that one characteristic of non-self. And then the suffering. One thing that I've come to notice, and some of you who are closer to me and spent more time with me might have witnessed this. And there are times where, someone might be telling a very sad story or a story that would make someone really angry. And I don't seem to react. Like, I don't seem to get as sad as the average person, or I don't seem to get as enraged or whatever it might be. It's not always the case. But it's not that I'm uncaring or unfeeling. It's that I recognize that every single one of us suffers, including myself. There's nobody who doesn't suffer. It's pretty much universal, whether it's a small little suffering or a big giant suffering, okay? Each one of us suffers. Is just the different stories. It's the different experiences and the different stories. And so that understanding, when you start to see a lot of people and give them Reiki, you start to accept that, okay, this person came in, their suffering is of this flavor or this nature, and that person came in and their suffering is also of a certain flavor or nature. And another person comes in and they've got a very different kind of suffering going on in their life, right? But the universal is that everybody, I'm hearing the REM song in the back of my mind, Everybody Hurts. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember that song, but okay, I see some of you singing, Karen singing. All right, Susanna knows the song. It's true, right? It is absolutely true. And so you stop judging so much, and you're able to actually come into a place of like being honest. We were talking about that at the beginning of today's talk, right? Being able to be honest and accept what's there and not really judge the person for their form of suffering, whatever that might be. So these are some ways in which healing work actually helps our mindfulness practice. Healing work can also create a few pitfalls, and I wanted to mention those as well, because I don't want us to kind of get into this idea that healing work and specifically Reiki is the end-all be-all wonderful thing, and if I get into this, then everything is going to be great and wonderful and hunky-dory. There are some pitfalls and misunderstandings that can come through when we're practicing healing, and specifically within Reiki. We can get very entranced by the light, and some of us, can do that for a period of time, and then we can come out of it, right? So we might be practicing Reiki, and then all of a sudden we feel like, oh, like, this light shining through, or we might feel like an actual guide coming through. We might see an archangel, or, a very powerful divine healing master, or, even a god of some kind. And it might be very, very alluring, and we might get entranced by that and want to just stay with that and want to have, that be our whole life. And I'm sorry, but there's no Reiki treatment that ever started that never ended. Okay, so there's always an end to the Reiki treatment. You have to go back to, eating dinner and, sweeping the floor and doing all the things that we need to do as human beings. So for anyone who thinks that my day consists of sitting on a cloud and meditating and doing healing all day, that's not how it looks at all. That's how it looks when I'm practicing Reiki. But all of that has its ups and downs. So life has to happen. The other thing that can happen, and this also happens when we're entranced in the light sometimes, but it's in the opposite direction. So when we're entranced in the light, we might feel very alert and very awake and very interested. The other thing that can happen when there's a lot of light, and this sometimes happens when people aren't used to the Reiki energy or aren't used to that amount of healing energy, and that is that they can get very sleepy. And I used to be the opposite, because I've always wanted to know. I wanted to know and learn and observe. So I would give myself Reiki in the morning. It would wake me up because I'd become a little bit more alert and interested in the energy and what was going on. But a lot of my students will say that they give themselves Reiki to fall asleep at night, and that it's helpful for them to kind of come into a place that's more calm and more peaceful. And so if you're practicing Reiki at night and it's helping to lull you to sleep, then know that that's the connection that your mind is making with the Reiki practice or with the healing energy. And so when you start to give yourself Reiki, you might not tend to be a little bit more alert. You might actually tend to become a little bit more drowsy or dazy or hazy or sleepy. Okay, so that could be something that your mind kind of puts together, like a connection that your mind can make. And that can be a little bit of a pitfall for some of us. Okay, so just to be aware that that's a possibility. Okay. Another thing that can happen is that if we're a Reiki practitioner, or even on the other hand, a receiver of Reiki energy, as a practitioner, you might begin to believe that you can fix any problem that happens. I mean, you can fix, physical problems, mental, emotional problems, spiritual problems. I can do anything, just put my hands on and then poof, all the problems go away. And this is not necessarily true. Everyone has their karma. Everyone has things that they need to experience in this life, both pleasant and unpleasant, lessons that we need to learn, things that we need to, I guess you could say karmic things that we need to pay back, karmic debts that we need to pay back. And so it's a pitfall with some healers that I have seen who, nobody here, okay, it's a pitfall that I've seen with some healers where they feel all of a sudden that they are doing the healing and that it's them, and that creates the opposite effect of the non-self, and it creates more of an ego and more of a self, okay? So it's important for us that practice healing to remember that ultimately it's not us who's doing the healing, that we're simply connecting with energy that is from the highest of good, from dimensions beyond our physical, our 4D dimensions, and that is what's facilitating the healing, and we're simply sort of the catalyst or the conduit for that healing. Okay, so it's not a self. We're not creating a self or a person or a healer out of it. In fact, when I finish with any client or any appointment that I have, I get out of my chair and I go get myself a glass of water, or I go to the bathroom, or I open the door and I go outside and take a couple of breaths of fresh air, and just sort of, I take away whatever it was that I was doing. And before I come back to, practicing with the next person, I make sure that I connect with the guides and make sure that I feel like I'm in my true integrity. And rather than thinking that I'm it's me, I'm the healer, I'm the one who's doing all the good stuff. Okay, so that can be a little bit of a pitfall. So those are some of the things that I wanted to make sure I mentioned, so that we don't misunderstand what healing is about and what it looks like, and ways that it can support mindfulness practice. And I think it's important for us when we are practicing both Reiki and mindfulness to know what works for us. We might have time and space in our life. For those of us who are healers or have taken a Reiki course or learned Reiki and like to practice on ourselves, it might be hard to set aside the required amount of time to practice if we want to practice healing and we want to practice formal mindfulness practice. How do we juggle all of that in our day? Recently, Lungpa Pramod, Jess's teacher in Thailand, said that practitioners should be practicing for 3 hours a day. And that's a lot. I don't know if anyone here can say that they have 3 hours each day to sit down and do your walking practice or combination. So if we're going to dedicate some time to this, it's important for us to know what our mind and what our consciousness is like. So for some of us, for me, for example, I might want to wake up in the morning and give myself a Reiki session in the morning when I first wake up. And then I might want to go and brush my teeth and, then get out of bed, brush my teeth, do all that kind of morning stuff, and then do my formal mindfulness practice once I'm alert and able to be happy and feel calm and peaceful, having given myself a bit of Reiki. For some people, they might want to do their mindfulness practice first thing in the morning. And like I was talking about a moment ago, if they find that Reiki helps them fall asleep, then leave your Reiki practice to the evening before you go to bed. And even if it's a half an hour or, you do 2 hand positions on yourself and then you fall asleep, then that's okay. Maybe you want to do your feet when you wake up just to get whatever remnants of energy out. So the timing of it, I don't want to say there's a one size fits all here. Okay. It's important for you to gauge how each of the practices benefit you, at what point in the day you have time, at what point in the day you have energy level that is appropriate for any of the practices that you need to do. And if you find that Reiki or healing practices are a really great thing to kind of front load your mindfulness with, you might do them back to back. You might do your Reiki or your healing first. And it might actually lead into a bit of a meditation. You might find that it's like a samatha for you. Okay, and so for me, certainly it does feel like a bit of a samatha. You might find that you're giving yourself Reiki and you're able to practice mindfulness while you're giving yourself Reiki. And that I've also experienced that, and it's wonderful to be able to know that you're able to do that and be completely aware and notice the shifts in energy and have your mind be alert that way. Okay. For some of us who are practicing Reiki for people throughout the day, you might feel that your mindfulness practice comes in while you're giving Reiki to people. Okay. So you might notice that your hands are on someone and your attention goes to your hands, or you become curious, or maybe you're nervous about sharing a message with somebody and you notice the nervous energy comes up or nervous feeling comes up. And so you might be able to build in some mindfulness into your day-to-day. You might find, like I do sometimes after the Reiki session, the person's nice and, they feel really comfortable and they're in a good place. And they get up and they're all of a sudden like, okay, I've got 30 questions for you. And then all of a sudden your heart just goes and you're all tight and you're like, please, no, I don't want to answer 30 questions. And, I got to go do something else now. Like me, if you're like me, you'll notice all of a sudden this unhappy feeling comes up because the person's all of a sudden like, wanting to get out of the Reiki energy and not even caring about the stuff that just happened and wants to be all like up here, right? And so you can find that your practices can work really well together if you understand how your energy works, how your mind works. If you're a little bit proficient in your mindfulness practice, you'll get a sense of at what time during the day, what feels more appropriate at what time of the day. Okay. I thought I would do a little guided healing for you guys, and then maybe guide you in like leading into a bit of a mindful awareness. Does that sound like something you guys want to do? Okay, so we have about 10 minutes. We'll spend 10 minutes together. So just get comfortable. Let yourself be however you are. You don't have to be completely perfect or sitting cross-legged or anything. And let's just take a moment to notice how this body is positioned. So notice the parts of the body that are bent, most likely bent at the hips, most likely bent at the knees, most likely bent at the elbows. Observing the spine, just noticing where the spine is at. Noticing if there's a liking or disliking of whatever it is that you're paying attention to. You can feel the pressure of the body as it is resting against the seat under you. You can feel how the seat is pressing against the backs of the thighs and the bottom. You might notice the belly, the rib cage, the upper chest, like you did earlier, expanding with each in-breath and releasing with each out-breath. You might now feel the whole body exactly as it is. You might notice if there are any reactions or responses to the things that you're observing. So just check in. Is there a liking or disliking, or is it somewhat neutral? Just allow yourself to continue to observe this body sitting and breathing. And see if you can allow yourself to observe the quality of the mind or the heart exactly as it is. And however the mind or heart are feeling, allow an understanding. Of course, it's feeling this way. This is a human being or a mind and body here. See if there's a bit of a spaciousness that's able to be created, an openness to what is here and what has been, an openness to what will come. Maybe even an openness to not knowing. Can this mind accept whatever is as it is? Even if what is wanting to fix or wanting to change something. Even that. If you wish, and if you have an object like the breath or a mantra, like a Buddha, or a movement like the hand opening and closing, feel free to introduce it. And just allow it to be as it is. Remembering that we are not trying to fix or change. We are not trying to be the world's best observers. We are not trying to stop thoughts. We're simply noticing for a moment here and there, this body, this mind and heart, and exactly how they are for just a moment. And notice if there's a change. I'm going to play a sound in a moment. 3, 2, 1. If you heard the sound, notice if there's liking or disliking. If you couldn't hear the sound, notice there might be something else. Confusion, curiosity. And if your eyes are closed, gently open them. Allow yourself to continue to practice if your eyes are open. If you're looking at the screen and you're seeing lots of faces and you're curious or happy or intrigued by someone's background on the screen, just notice what's there. Okay, so thank you all for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. I hope that some of what was shared resonated with you or assisted you if there has been any difficulty or confusion. And I invite you to get in touch with me if there are questions, if there's something that was unclear. Please do reach out. I'll put my information in the chat in a little bit. In the meantime, before we wrap up, I'd like to, thanks Jess for putting that in there. I'd like to end our short practice with some metta. So let's take a moment. If you wish, you can bring your hands, palms together, right in front of the heart center. Let's share the merits of our practice with all beings, the goodwill that we share with all beings, the metta that we share with all beings. Let's practice sending a ripple or wave of kindness and goodness out into the world. May all beings in all realms, big or small, large, medium, tiny, seen, unseen, known to us, unknown to us, those with 2 legs, those with 4, those with many, those with none, any kind of being and all kinds of beings, omitting none. May all beings everywhere, each and every one, be happy, be safe, be at ease, be at peace, be well and healthy. May all beings be free from suffering. And thank you all once again.
So wonderful. Thank you so much, Salima. Such great reminders. Reiki is